welcome to the end of the season Bill Neese's Coaches Show. I am your host, Chip Hare. With us is head coach Bill Neese. And coaches, we wrap up the season. The Indians finished 7-1, lose their last game here to Cincinnati Anderson, and what was it was a great game, and on many cases it was a horrible game on another case, but it was if you're just watching the game, I suppose there were a lot of people out there that thought it was a good football game to watch. Nonetheless, it was not to take away. We'll talk about that game, but a great year overall for the Indians, 7-1, 6-0 in the regular season. Beat our rivals Troy, beat our rivals Sydney, win the MVL championship, and get a playoff win for the first time in several years. So certainly a good year.
Well, it was a great year, and we factored into the situation that we started off the year against Troy, and we're able to get that particular monkey off our back, so to speak, and get the Piqua Troy Trophy, the Battle of the Miami, back to Piqua here was essential. And then as we moved on, as you said, the battered helmet was always great to go over to Sydney and win there. And the other kind of championship that we got crowned this year was the Miami County Championship, where we were able to beat Tip City also. And at the time, those were two undefeated teams, and Tip went on to go into the third round of the playoffs like we did, and enjoyed one of the best years they've had in a couple of years, almost back to the days when they were going to the playoffs every year. So I thought that was important, and it was a fun year. It was a great year. I think the injury factors were not huge, and as a result of that, I thought we were able to put our best athletes on the field the majority of the time during the season, and that is always something, high school football wise, that's different than college and the pros, because it isn't next man up, like it is in the pros and in college. In high school football, it's who can we get to play there? Do we have to move somebody's position, or is somebody going to play both ways? That's usually what happens. And we did have good depth this year, I will say that. But normally, an injury can mess you up pretty bad in high school football. We were fortunate we didn't have many.
Coach, it was an unusual year in many ways. COVID protocols changed a lot of things for us in our workouts before the season even started. Into the season, there were no scrimmages.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, if you ask everybody, I've asked several players, I've asked several coaches, I've asked several community people, what was the highlight of the season? What was the number one thing that you had to pull out? What win was it, or what moment? And almost to the person, everyone talks about Troy. Mm-hmm. It was the first game of the year. Yeah. We had no scrimmages. There was nothing really. I mean, we were out there raw as they were. Everybody was in the same position.
Oh, exactly.
But it was a game that we overcame. That it was just our time.
Mm-hmm. A number of factors were involved in it. I think number one, that and I've said this before, because we didn't have that many people or very few people playing both ways. I think really Caleb Lyons is only 100% two-way player we had, and we had some good backups on the offensive line. I think we were able to scrimmage each other really well during the course of our two-a-day session, and we spaced it out pretty well. But I think we were able to get really good contact in and get our players ready for that. So I think, not that Troy didn't, but I think that was one of the things
Sure.
that helped us. I think number two, we put such a huge emphasis this offseason on our turnover deal offensively that it was just amazing. We had drills, we had stations, we had everything. And we just put more emphasis on it. And we've done certain things before, but this is really emphasizing. And the fact that we had, the entire year, we fumbled the ball 3 times, lost 3 fumbles, and threw 2 interceptions was just amazing. And I think that was one of some of the preparation we had, coming into the year. So I think those 2 big things, the fact that we were able to scrimmage ourselves, and the fact that we put such an emphasis this year, and now from now on, obviously we're going to do it. But this year, the emphasis on we don't fumble. We just do not fumble, and make a big deal out about it. I think that helped.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that made this team successful, but that's one factor that you talk about no turnovers. That really neutralizes the other team when you're not giving them extra opportunities to score.
And the other thing is we wanted to limit ourselves defensively. Our big goal was to limit the amount of balls that were going over our head. We gave up a lot of big plays last year, especially on the outsides, and this year we held it down to 2. It went from 14 last year to 2. And of course, it helps that our pass rush tripled their amount of sacks. It helps that those guys were a year older. And it also helps, again, with the fact that we've had a couple new drills we put in. We did some things during the course of the week, changed our practice schedule quite a bit this year. It's probably the most dramatic practice schedule change we've had in my 25, 30-plus years that I've been here.
What are some of the things you did differently practice-wise?
Well, we number one, we didn't have a set practice schedule, so to speak, in terms of what we were exactly going to do. We let drills go until we thought we were done with them, and then we'd move on to another area. And number two, we were able to practice offense, defense, and special teams every day. It used to be we'd come out, Monday would be special teams, emphasis Tuesday, a little bit offense, a little defense. Tuesday would be this, Tuesday would be offense, Wednesday would be defense. So everybody knew on Tuesday that the offense was supposed to win every drill. And then everybody knew on Wednesday the defense was supposed to win every drill. Well, we mixed offense, defense, special teams in throughout the whole thing, and nobody knew the order of what they were going to happen. So all of a sudden, we could be going from a 7-on-7 to an individual offense period to an inside run period, and no one knew who was supposed to be winning. So as a result, the competition was so much more intense during our practices. It was amazing. I think the only hint sometimes was we put beanies, because we all have the same practice jerseys, so we put the beanies on, and I think the guys catch a little bit sometimes that if you're wearing the beanies, it's actually a drill for the other guys that you're simulating.
Right.
But, you got the cameras up there. The other thing that was great is Katie Smith's managing crew was able to film everything of our practices. So when we got done, we had every drill on both sides of the field mapped out, and we were able to sit down after each one of those, after each practice, and
break it down
and watch it. Just sit down, have offense over here, defense over here, watch it, then watch a little bit of our opponent, and then send everybody home. So it's a big difference in how we've done it.
Coaches, we talk about our practice and just who we are. I mean, the one thing we talk about, let's talk about the senior class, is this senior class had not beaten Troy coming into this year.
Yeah.
This senior class had a little bit of success, but as a collective unit had not done a lot of the things that this group had been able to move forward. That had to be a huge confidence builder for them, but also to be a part of it. You had some young guys, obviously your sophomores and your junior class, who had some success in coming through. Which is a little unusual because they were actually kind of bringing your seniors along, like, hey, we're going to get this thing done.
Yeah.
And it was, and obviously we had some great senior leadership. You put with a combination of that, it really did help.
And that's the thing, the way we're kind of made up here, chemistry-wise. We're never going to, I don't know that I can ever say that we had like that senior class that, they're going to come in and like when I was in high school, we had a senior class that 21 out of the 22 starters were seniors. Okay. We always have a senior class that's going to be 13 to 17, 13 to 20, and they're going to be great contributors, but they also need juniors and sophomores, and we're always going to be in that position. We're always going to have 3 or 4 sophomores that are going to be starting for us. We're always going to have 10 or 12 juniors that are going to start for us, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Right.
That's our demographic right here. And so that senior class, to a man, was able to contribute. Every single person,
sure did.
and each one of them was featured on one of our shows, and each had a niche. Each guy can sit down and say, hey, back when I was a senior, this is what I did to contribute to the team. I got film to prove it.
Well, when you talk to those seniors on the show, you could tell for them this was special. And regardless of the week that we were talking about, whether it was coming off the Troy week or going into the Tip week, they were always guarded about, hey, yes, we had some success, but we've got, and then was the next week on. So the other thing that I notice about this team is, unlike some of the other teams that we've had, and again, this is no disrespect to the other teams, some of it has to do with maturity. This team was a little different. They were made up a little bit differently. But this team came ready to play every week. There wasn't a time when they didn't come ready to play.
That's true. I believe that also. And even the last game, where we had, the weather situation, and we had this and we had this, I thought everybody held together very well, and I thought we went out and played a very good game. Once we got used to the speed of Anderson and used to some of the things they were doing, I think we were able to slow it down, and that's a tribute to a lot of the kids on our team, the maturity-wise, saying, hey, we came in at halftime, and we said, all right, we're getting a little frustrated because we're not making these big plays like we have been making. But, guys, this is the third round of the playoffs. It doesn't come cheap anymore.
Right.
These guys are expecting to make as big a plays too, and they've only scored 2 touchdowns, and they're used to this and this and this. And so it's in the playoffs, it's kind of like a tractor pull. I mean, the further you go, the harder it's going to get, man. And you just got to understand that as you go through.
Let's talk a little bit about Cincinnati Anderson. That game was certainly a game that had a lot of twists and turns. First, we don't get to start on time because of delays. So, like you talked about, we're sitting in the locker room ready to go. Their offense is very potent and high-powered, and they're very fast in terms of speed. Mm-hmm. So we had to adjust to that. We were down at halftime for the first time, so there were a lot of little things that we weren't used to, as you were talking about before. But as a team, as strange as all those things were, we still had chances to win at the end of the game.
Oh, we did. And as you look back on that, and you see, there's certain things, all of a sudden, we turned the ball over a little bit. All of a sudden, we had some penalties. All of a sudden, we had this. And again, you can't do that once you get to a certain level. You can, and the reason why we're in the third round of the playoffs and why we had been undefeated up to that point is because we didn't turn the ball over, because we made smart decisions. And so I think that those coupled together, just kind of messed it up a little bit. But when you look at it, the fact that it was down to the wire, we were still battling in there. The fact that defensively, we held them to the lowest amount of points except for one other game that they've had. The passing yardage, they get 400 yards passing on everybody, and it's just incredible the way they just get the ball around. It's hard to get to him sometimes.
Sure.
He was getting the ball and throwing it, so you have to make sure that you can do some other things in the back end. And I thought offensively we did well. We were able to block their front pretty well, but again, we just couldn't piece together everything at the same time. We just didn't fit in together.
Well, their quarterback was awfully special. I mean, he certainly made them go. He was the guy that was their trigger. But their defense also played very well.
And again, you're going to be a solid team when you're in the third round of the playoffs. And the next week it was kind of odd to see it. The next week they're playing Cincinnati LaSalle, and they're throwing for 500 yards against Cincinnati LaSalle, and you're thinking, going, man, I thought that was the worst game we played. But then you look over and then you see that they threw for this, and we knew some of the statistics beforehand and everything. So. When you step back and look at the overall picture, then that's what you got to do. Obviously you can't define your season with one game. I think you can. It's easier to define your season with one game when you win the game. Like we can say, okay, Troy, that was great. Sydney, that was great. But you don't. When you're in the playoffs, the hardest thing about the playoffs is as soon as they start, there's a timer, and you're either going to end your season abruptly and not very good, or you're going to win the state championship.
Right.
So as soon as you cash that ticket to the playoffs, man, it's either win it all or it's going to be a bad night at some point. Right. Something's going to catch up, and it caught up with us in the third round.
Well, there certainly wasn't many of those nights this year. We really did go through let's talk real quick about the league. We talked about Troy and what that meant to finally get that that going, and then for us to beat Vandalia on the road. That's always been a challenging game for us, particularly down at their place. Beat a good Stebbins team who came in undefeated. And you look at Stebbins, they made a run into the playoffs themselves, and before losing to LaSalle. We look at their first 3 games before we even get to the second half. Well, we played some pretty good football teams.
I think we did. I think our schedule prepared us for a lot of good things. And I think our players lived up to the potential they had this year. I thought they did a very good job.
Going to beating Greenville, and then going to, like you talked about, the last 2 games. If you look at our schedule, were the ones that probably jumped out at me at the beginning of, you're going to go to Tip, and then you're going to go to Sydney back to back. Those are 2 tough. And offensively, between the two games, they only scored 3 points between the two teams.
Yeah, it was a good back-to-back stretch right there, and both those teams were going good. Sydney had some ups and downs a little bit, but they had the leading offense in the league. They had the leading receiver, leading quarterback, everything. That's always a big challenge, and then Tip's always going to be a big challenge just because of the fact they're very solid. They're very solid. They play really good fundamental football, and a lot of times when you talk about Tip and you talk about Tip, Troy, Piqua, we all kind of play the same. I think they're all good fundamentally sound football teams that are going to come out and hit you, and if you beat them, you're going to have to earn it, and you're going to feel it the next day.
Sure.
That you beat them.
Coach, before we wrap up here, we talked about the seniors a little bit, but just one more time, our senior class, what this meant to this team, their leadership. I mean, we had multiple individuals that really statistically were great, but off the field too, their leadership was outstanding.
That was, and again, when you look down the line, when we come in the locker rooms, those guys would be the first ones here, and they were stationed all across the locker room. I thought they really did well mixing our juniors and our sophomores into it. And the first day of practice, I told our seniors, I said, hey guys, if you could do one thing, I think we're going to have a successful season. If you can play your senior year with the mindset that you're only a junior, I think everything's going to be fine. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you get your senior year, and sometimes you say, well, it's my senior year. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to this. And I said, a lot of times, when you're a junior, man, you're just hungry. All you want to do is play, keep your position, stay healthy, and try to help win football games. And I said, if you can do that, if you can have that mindset, everything else is going to be good. And I think a lot of those seniors, every senior, played their senior year like it was their junior year. They were still hungry. They weren't entitled to anything. They didn't take anything for granted.
Well, we're certainly going to miss that senior class, and I know that was a year that they won't soon forget, nor will this school district or community. Don't want to talk too much about the future, but we'd be remiss if we didn't do that. With those players coming back, we've got a lot of juniors who will be seniors, and sophomores will be juniors next year. A lot of things are looking up for the Indians, particularly next season. Oh yeah, we've got a lot of returning people coming back, and the thing is, we've got, as you look through the deal, we've got a 7-1 JV team coming in that I thought probably played as one of the better JV teams we've had in a long time. And those guys are coming in filled with offensive linemen, which is what we need. And I think that group is going to come in. They're going to blend right in. And then we've got a 9th grade class that was also 7-1. And so I think in both of those cases, everybody's got a little point to prove. And coincidentally, the only loss of our JVs and the only loss of our freshmen, if I'm not mistaken, would be the men of Troy. So I think those guys would obviously be coming in, and wanting to rectify that situation also. Well, the future of Piqua football for next year and in the coming years certainly looks good. It was a good year overall. We handled, it would be, again, on normal circumstances, we had to deal with masks, we had to deal with social distancing, we had crowd limitations. There were a lot of things that circled around, but yet we overcame that, and the kids not only had a season, but they had a successful season. They did. They've all become great cleaners. I think everybody in the future is going to learn one thing. A lot of people are going to learn how to clean stuff, how to keep things clean. We all know how to run sweepers. We all know how to dust. We all know how to wipe things down. So I think we're going to be better for it just from that regard only. We'll be a lot neater people. Well, and would be also remiss if we didn't mention your staff. They did a great job, not just coaching on the field, but all of the behind-the-scenes stuff that make this season a go. It doesn't just happen with you and just our players. It takes a whole staff. Yeah, and we've got a great group, and we've been together a pretty long time, and that's the other thing that helped when we changed the practice schedule, that everybody knew the names of every drill. Most drills are named after all of our coaching staff. And we've got different drills. Some coaches have 2 and 3 drills named after them. And so we could immediately just go in and say, boom, okay, we should be doing bargee tackle over here, when we've got crate kickoff drill over here, and everybody just goes bang, goes to the spot. Okay, so and whether or not it be Ool versus Travis over on this end, or this and this and this, we've got names for everything. So it's great that when a new guy comes in, they just have to learn it, real quick, and it's like, stay with us, and you'll be ready to go. So it works out pretty well. Coach, we'll take a little time off, and then we'll start cranking back up again in the weight room, and the 2021 season ongoing will begin.
Yep, everybody's up there right now, because we have been classing in the mornings. Everybody's up there working hard. You're trying to get, I think if you can get your strength back, what you had like right around Thanksgiving, when we come back from Thanksgiving, we bring everybody together. That's when you start getting that strength back up and get going.
Well, Coach, congratulations again on a great season, and we look forward to a great 2021.
Thank you.
Indian Nation Station, thank you for joining us this year and going along with the ride with the Indians as the Piqua 2020 Indians finish 7-1. They're your MVL champions, and be a team that will be remembered for quite a few years. For Coach Bill Neese, I'm your host, Chip Hare. Thanks for joining us.